Hello, my project managers. How you doing today? I hope you're doing great. I hope you had a good day in the project management field. I'm going to be sharing with you today 10 leadership tips for project managers. Now, if you weren't already aware, the PMI has really upped the awareness of leadership in the world of project management. The PMI has defined various parameters and various variables in the PMBOK Guide 6th edition regarding leadership. It's one thing to go for a PMI cert and to say, I'm a certified program manager, project manager, business analyst, and all of that. And all that's well and good. But at the end of the day, the true measure of your success will be found in your ability to lead. As my mentor, John C. Maxwell, says, the lower the lid on your potential indicates the lower your ability to lead. Your ability to excel and exceed in terms of your potential is dictated by the lid on your potential. And that's the leadership lid. If you cannot lead effectively and expand as a leader, you're always going to be stunted, no matter what you do. No matter how many certifications you have, no matter how many tools you've got in your kit bag, the SAPs and the MS projects and the Primaveras of this world. You can have all of that stuff down tight, but your ability to excel and exceed is capped by that leadership lid. So project managers need to learn how to effectively lead in their own unique situation. So I'm going to share with you 10 ways I think you can exceed and excel in leadership, all right, as a project manager. This is quite specific to project managers. So the first tip I've got for you here, be you a PMP or whatever certification you've got, is trust your stakeholders. And I'm going to be sharing a lot about your mental attitude as a project manager, because it's all about how you think and all about what you think. It's all about what you're thinking about your stakeholders. So my first tip is trust your stakeholders and have a positive mental attitude about them. For example, when you meet a stakeholder for the first time, don't immediately put labels on the stakeholder as to whether they are an ally or they are an enemy. You cannot do that. You should not do that. Don't evaluate a stakeholder on your first meeting with a stakeholder. As one of my other mentors says, Rick Brinkman, who wrote the book, Dealing with People You Can't Stand, he talks about this concept of free hallucination. You meet someone for the first time, you begin to think things that aren't really there about the person. Maybe because of a previous experience with someone who reminds you of someone from the past, or maybe you open up an email and you're hearing things that email isn't really saying. You see, as a PM, we need to trust our stakeholders. It's healthy and it's helpful so that we as leaders have a positive mental attitude and we're not giving off negative vibes, negative connotations to our team members. So my first step is trust your stakeholders. Now, as the project proceeds and you have concrete evidence that the person is a negative stakeholder, that is different. I'm talking about initial meetings, meeting someone for the first time, or meeting someone in the context of your project for the first time. It will really help if you understand I'm here to be a catalyst for change, and I'm not going to assume what is not. All right. So do not fear your stakeholders. You want to, first of all, have trust in the back of your mind. The second tip is have a positive mindset about your project stakeholders. So the first one is trust them. Secondly, have a positive mindset about these stakeholders. Having a positive mindset means you are planning to keep them engaged because you want to add value to them, because you want to add value to the firm, because you want that solution that you're working on to make life easier. It's all part of this positive mental attitude thing. I find a lot of project managers, they are negative about their stakeholders right from the get-go and throughout the project. It's not going to help. So be it the customer, be it your team members, be it people that are from wider away in the firm, you need to have a positive mindset about them at all times. My third tip, still about mindset, is have a collaborative mindset about your stakeholders. Instead of it being me versus them or us versus them, have a collaborative attitude and mindset. Think about the greater good of your project. Don't just think about yourself and what you want to get from it. What a lot of PMs want to get from it, they want to shine, they want to look good on the project, but that's the wrong attitude. That's not the collaborative attitude. The collaborative attitude should be we're together as a team, we're doing this as a team. There's no I in team, remember that? My fourth tip for you as a project manager is remember, influence is the new deal. Influence. Now, before you get to this topic about influence, you need to have the right mindset so that you're not looking to influence for the wrong reasons. So remember, influence is the new deal. Remember, if you are not influencing, you're not leading. As John Maxwell says, another quote from him says, the true measure of leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. If you are not influencing, you're not leading. If you're beating people over the head with a stick and you are in a project-oriented organization where your boss, you're micromanaging and you're forcing people to do things that they're not fully convinced they should do, you're not influencing. You're coercing, and people should not be led. In fact, that's not even leadership. People should not be treated that way. So influence is the new deal. But my question to you is, how do you gain influence inroads in your organization? First of all, have the positive mental attitude about your stakeholders. Don't assume. And then think positively. Don't be negative. Think in a collaborative fashion. And then begin to think about influence, the true measure of leadership. So there are 5 approaches, 5 ways, 5 levels. You might have heard of the 5 levels of leadership. Great book. But I want you to go look into that book after this. But the 5 levels of leadership start off, first of all, I'm going to show you. It's funny that the PMI at the same time in the PMBOK guide, they have a similar dogma regarding this whole leadership thing, similar to what John Maxwell has in his book, Positional Power. Positional, sometimes called formal, authoritative, legitimate. For example, formal position granted in the organization or team. That's a good starting point to begin to influence people based on your position. Because when you're coming into a firm or coming into a business unit, wherever you find yourself newly, you don't really have much to work with. You've got your position. Now, as you begin to be absorbed into the environment, you find other aspects of influence options. But right off the bat, you need to start with, I'm the project manager. What can I do by way of influence as the project manager? Because you haven't yet gained that trust. They don't really know you that well. So you're going to have to gain, walk up the ladder, so to speak. So we've got positional power being talked about. Now, that is level 1 in John's book, The 5 Levels of Leadership. Starts off with your position, your title. It's primitive, but it's the beginning. Follow me, I'm king, whether you like the king or not. Now, in the world of the project manager, people don't often follow project managers because they're project managers. People may listen to, in a functional organization, they may listen to the big boss, but in a matrix firm, especially a weak matrix or functional organization, they may very well not even take notice of the project manager, all that. So it's a starting point. It's primitive. It's a starting point. And if you don't have a high position, then you're even lower down on the rung. You're starting off really low, because you've got many layers and levels above you, especially in functional and matrix firms. And this is why a lot of PMs get frustrated, and they cop out. because you've got the project manager, then you've got a layer above, you've got their manager, and then you've got a senior manager, and then you've got a director, then you've got a senior director, then you got a VP, then you got a senior VP, then you got something like a COO or CTO or CIO, all the C's. And before you know it, you've got about 10 chains of command before you get to where the head honcho is. And your level of influence is very limited. So you can see position and title, you're lower down on the rung. So it's a starting point, your position, but you shouldn't stop there. If you look a few bullets down on page 63 in the PMBOK guide, you then get to the second level that John talks about. You get into relational, you get into the personal or charismatic approach. You also can see things like ingratiation and stuff like that. But I like to really cap this on the more positive notes, such as personal or charismatic, charm, attraction. Then you've got relational, your ability to network, networking, very important, connections and alliances. Now, some PMs are guilty of totally bypassing this bullet that talks about relational leadership, your ability to influence based on your relationships. Someone says, oh, I don't care about anyone else. I'm just doing my own thing. I'm going to do me. Everyone else do them. But that's not the right approach, because in order to influence, you need to have alliances. No one has ever done anything great alone. You're going to have people helping you, introducing you, exposing you to the wider world around you that will enable you get more clout, influence, understand where resources are in the firm, so on and so forth. So I want to call your attention to level 2. Level 2 is all about people following you, you influencing them because they like you, because they know, they trust, they like that character they see. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to be an extrovert and have that charisma going on, but to a large degree, you should be aware of the likability factor. People don't like you, you're not going to get very far. You might get a few yards or meters, by beating people over the head with a stick, but that's where it's going to end. And at the end of the day, the PM is going to be frustrated. But if you realize you're not their boss, therefore, in order to lead those people, you're going to have to use other aspects of leadership. So here on page 63 of the PMBOK guide, we can see the personal or the charismatic aspect, charm and attraction. You greet people with a ready smile instead of a frown. You have a positive mental attitude right from the get-go. So when you relate with those people, what happens? Their hearts begin to melt. Now, you're not doing this in a malicious way just because you want influence over them. You're doing that because it is now your nature to have a positive mental attitude. And that's why I covered the first 3 tips about mindset, about stakeholders. I once had a stakeholder in a well-known bank, worked in this bank for a while, and this stakeholder I felt was very negative. And my job revolved around certain SLAs, and we would attempt to deliver based on those SLAs, and we might fail. We would have failed by maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And there were big sums of money that were meant to be paid for meeting these SLAs. But this particular stakeholder would relish in the fact that we were 30 seconds away from 5 o'clock, or we were after 5 o'clock, or we were 1 minute after 2 o'clock, or whenever these SLAs had to be implemented. Long story short, we got frustrated about this character until one day, and this was long, long ago before I even started studying with John or came into the world of the PMI, long time ago. But all of a sudden, my mindset began to change because of some of my previous mindsets and orientations I had been exposed to, not to the degree I am now, but I began to think, maybe this person is not as bad. Truly, we missed those SLAs. So how dare I be mad at him for rejecting? Of course, we're late. The deliverable has been delivered, but it's late. He's still not going to pay for it, even though you've delivered it. So we were losing money. I wasn't very happy about that. But I came to a realization, we're late, we're late. SLA wasn't met. Put yourself in the shoes of this stakeholder. Isn't he right? I began to adjust my mindset. Bit by bit, I began to realize that I was wrong. So the next opportunity I had, when as usual, due to certain issues that were happening in traffic and my drivers ended up being late with those SLAs, I had an opportunity of saying, I totally understand why you will not sign off on this. And I'm not going to hold you, as an enemy to this. I'm just going to understand that we're late. So I understand if you're not going to sign off on it. And if we give it to you as a freebie, that's totally fine. Sorry that we delivered this late. On the second occasion I did this stakeholder said, you guys are always late, but I'm going to sign it this time. And he signed off. As a result of that, I became even more passionate to ensure that this stakeholder's service levels were delivered as agreed. Now, that is changing my mindset. What if I had the same negative mindset? Yeah, he's always doing this. He's negative. Because many of his colleagues, they wouldn't find it a big deal. Yeah, it's 5:01, no big deal. It should have been here at 5, it's 5:01. But that is the wrong mindset, even for project managers. If your project is not delivering, you need to take ownership and say, we're messing up badly. Take ownership. Remember the PMI Code of Ethics. It's your responsibility. Just say, I'm responsible. Take ownership. Decisions you take or fail to take, actions you took or failed to take. You need to say, I'm responsible. I'm sorry. How can we make it better? That's the mindset. I remember in a previous firm, a colleague of mine said, Phil, my SPI has gone to the dogs. If management sees this, I'm doomed. And I said, sorry, bud, I'm affiliated with the PMI. I have to be honest. Your SPI is what it is. I can't lie about that. You're going to have to face the music. Management is going to have to help you dig yourself out of the pit if they can, And that's the disposition. Management needs to know about bad news. And if there's bad news, we as PMs need to fix it. It's all that mental attitude and being likable. Anyway, long story short, ended up leaving that bank and ended up missing this stakeholder who was once upon a time in my mind, because I was hallucinating freely, was a negative stakeholder. But actually, he wasn't negative. He was just someone who had the right to exert his SLAs, you see. So anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is at level 2, as a project manager, you need to be likable. You need to have that charm. If possible, if you're the charismatic sort, have that charisma working for you. But think about relationships, relationship building. People follow you, not because of position at level 2, but they follow you because they like you. And at this level, work can be fun. But we need to go beyond making work fun. We need to make it productive, and we need to be hitting our marks or our SLAs like that previous job. So that's level 2. And level 3 is kind of implicitly covered in some way with all that the PMI has said. But level 3, as far as influence is concerned, it's all about you doing things for your firm. People look around, they're like, my goodness, look at what Sandeep has done for the firm. He's blown this project out of the water. This guy is delivering, he's bringing it, he's killing it. That's level 3, what you've done for your firm. Have you done anything remarkable for your firm that has saved your firm from failure? I often talk about the story of Microsoft way back when Bill Gates had Internet Explorer at level 6 on his priority list. One of his employees went to Cornell University and saw what was going on at Cornell and said, my goodness, Bill, the sky's falling here at Microsoft, we're in trouble. We need to accentuate the importance of the internet, because what I've seen at Cornell University is crazy. It's off the chain. If we don't get Internet Explorer higher up on our priority list, we're doomed. Now look around you today. Where are the Netscapes of this world? Those of you who are old enough to remember that. What about the AOLs of this world? Where are they? But even though lots of us don't like IE, in lots of governments worldwide, IE is still a browser to be reckoned with. I know a lot of people use the Chromes and the Firefoxes of this world and the Safaris, but IE still has its market share. In fact, I was training a client out of the UK and they said, Phil, sorry, the MOD will not let us use this as we're working on this stuff. So Internet Explorer now became a higher priority on Bill's agenda. And that's why I believe Internet Explorer is still relevant. If they had missed the boat on that one, they would have failed. You see, what am I trying to say? What you have done for the firm, that employee, when we tell the story, we don't even remember his name, but that employee stood out and said, it's my responsibility to make a change, to do something for the organization, to ring the bell, to raise the alarm, the alert. Too many people, project managers trying to be docile in the firm. Big project comes up, there's an opportunity to step up. And the PM says, oh, I don't want to be recognized. This is too big. Raise the lid, folks. Raise the lid of your leadership. Expand. Go for the challenging projects, project manager. That's how you're going to step up and begin to influence and lead. When people see what you've done for the firm, then they want to follow. So you got to start doing big things for the firm, not the namby-pamby type of, oh, this is a cushy project. It's easy for me to manage. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to have to deal with big players. Grow up, folks. Put on the big boy or the big girl pants and go manage those projects. You need to expand. A lot of people have been PMPs for donkey years. They're still in the same position, doing the same thing, not influencing anyone, not growing. I want to challenge you, PMPs. What are you doing? A lot of people tell me, oh, I know that person. They call themselves a PMP. I can manage projects better than them. Now, that's not a positive attitude, but is it true? Is it reality? You see, it's all about leadership. So I want to encourage you, get to level 3, begin to do insanely crazy, awesome things for your firm. That when your CEOs or your C-level executives hear about what you did, they would be challenged. And your reason for doing this is because you want to positively influence with your trust brand. Every PM has a trust brand. What is your trust brand? Or should I say, what is your distrust brand? Have a trust brand. And having a trust brand, it starts with you knocking stuff out of the park. It starts with you doing what you said you would do and beyond. That's level 3. Now, level 4 is a level that a lot of people often bypass, and it's right there. In fact, you can get to level 4 right now in your influence. And level 4 is your ability to influence because of what you have done for people around you. Level 3, what you've done for the firm. Level 4, what have you done for people around you? What have you done for the janitor? Or what have you done for your subordinates? Or what have you done for your manager, your boss? What have you done? Have you shared some information that you know could greatly impact them? Let's take a look here in the PMBOK guide, page 63. It says informational power. For example, control of gathering or distribution. If you have some key information that your boss has no clue about, or your boss is on the line for certain things and your boss doesn't know, how about sharing that information with her? Share the information with her and you would have added value to her. Or are there certain things that are near and dear to your leader's heart? Help your leader out. Have you found your leader submerged? You see, I was once in a company that was tanking very, very quick. And I saw the CEO grasping for straws and struggling. And this dude was doing all he could, trying his best, but it wasn't good enough. And the company was sinking fast. I saw the CEO at a meeting and I said, thank you for all you're doing for us. Pretty much giving him the proverbial pat on the back. Did I need to do that? I didn't have to do that. But that's part of stepping up as a leader at level 4. You add value to people. A lot of PMs get it wrong. They're like, Phil, I don't know how to practice what PMI is saying on page 63. It says reward-oriented, ability to give monetary rewards. And I say, I think you missed a word when it comes to reward power, because you can give to people at level 4 by giving them praise, by saying, well done, a pat on the back. It ties back to level 2 as well. A lot of people are scared of giving praise. They think it makes them weak. No, it doesn't. Be that river. Give praise. Let it flow. Let people know when they've done a great job. You know what's even better? When you give public praise, it goes a long way. A lot of PMs, they're just walking past their abilities to influence. Don't do that. Influence tomorrow. Give someone praise. Give someone the good old pat on the back, because you never know who that person's going to be in the future and what they're going to do for you. I remember in a previous firm, I had a boss who said, Phil, you're a good worker. I know you need to do your master's degree. I'm going to let you do your master's degree full time, but all I ask is keep the department intact. I listened up to my boss and I said, I'll let it happen. I'll make sure I do everything possible, even when I'm out to my master's degree lectures. Long story short, after I graduated, forgot about it, traveled the world, and long since forgot about what I had actually received from this manager, until one day I get a call over a decade later. Or should I say a LinkedIn? It was more like a LinkedIn message. And this individual said, Phil, I can't believe they let me go. That's the end of my tenure here. I need to reinvent myself. I need to study. So this manager, same manager who gave me a pat on the back, started reinventing himself. How? As a project management consultant. Put this manager on my LMS, gave this manager some of the books I had written about C-level management, mid-level to C-level project management. And this manager took this information and did a 360 reinvention to become a consultant. You never know where the person you're giving the pat on the back will find themselves. There I was trying to get my master's degree done. There, that manager was adding value to me, letting me take my courses. And 10 years later, here I am paying back, not even thinking that I would ever find myself in this position. So why am I sharing this story with you? You never know where your influence, where the pat on the back, where the praise, where the encouragement will go. I would not have been able to sufficiently and easily get my master's degree in construction IT at University of Greenwich without this individual giving me the ability to do so, letting me take full-time lectures in the middle of that job, because he knew I was a good worker. I held down the fort and he added value to me. So at level 4, folks, you're adding value. You're adding value to the people you're working with. You're training them, you're coaching them, you're equipping them, you're rewarding them. You're adding an insane amount of value anywhere you can. I want to challenge you. If you're a project manager working with different people, this is a concept I developed. I called it a value plan. Have you got a value plan for the people you're working with? Are you adding value to them in an intentional fashion? If you are in a projectized firm and you've got staff members reporting to you, do you intentionally add value to each one of those folks? You should. You should give praise. You should add value through coaching, mentoring, advice, and so on. And if you're a project manager and you feel, oh, I'm not that high up on the ladder, how am I going to add value up there? Don't think like that. You can add value to anyone in the firm regarding project management. A lot of people, they fail to realize that they are not just project managers. They are change agents, and they should be a catalyst for change. And part of being a catalyst for change is training people, coaching people, equipping them about project management. Once upon a time when I was at Honeywell, I looked around me and I saw lots of my colleagues failing the PMP exam, left, right, and center. It was just chaos. It was horrible. So I knew that management had an objective for them to get certified. So I asked my boss, Jim, I said, Jim, I think I can add value to these folks. I think I can do a lunch and learn, maybe weekly or bi-weekly, where I add value to them in their PMP prep. This was not in my job description, by the way. My job description was earned value management implementation. Nothing to do with PMP training. But my boss said, that sounds like a good idea, Phil. Let me talk to Mark. So he goes, talks to Mark, our director. Mark says, great idea. And he's a PMP. So he realizes the benefits of the constant mentoring and training. He says, Phil, let's do this thing. Let's make it a lunch and learn for the first meeting. Because where there's lunch, people show up. Lo and behold, it was a success. I think we had going to 20 people, some on the phone as well in the first meeting. Long story short, within a number of months, I had added value to over 50 of my colleagues. I ended up losing count of how many people I had helped ace the exam, even before I started my full-time project management training. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to let you see there are avenues, folks, that you can influence. Maybe people aren't taking the PMP exam in your firm, but you can add value in project management to these folks. You can expose them to project management. You can volunteer. Oh, I want to have a lunch and learn to expose people to how we do things in our PMO. Right now, I'm actually developing a system training people, project managers, how to implement the PMBOK guide. I'm giving people a lot of training and coaching about how to implement it. Because it's one thing to have the PMBOK guide, and to have read it and to know it, but how are you using it? How are you implementing it? Are you trying to kill people by implementing every single bit of it? Or are you doing it smart? Are you doing it using the 80-20 principle, Pareto's law? How are you implementing the PMBOK guide? So I'm developing that curriculum, and that will be available in a few weeks. And you'll be able to learn how to implement the PMBOK guide. It's also at level 4 because you're adding value to people. You're training them, you're coaching them, you're equipping them about project management. All right. So right now we are talking about how to influence. This is my 5th tip, and we're going into a lot of details surrounding page 63 in the PMBOK guide, 6th edition. And I am also giving insights into John C. Maxwell's The 5 Levels of Leadership. And the 5 levels I'm talking about are in that book. Now, the 5th level to talk about is when you get to the pinnacle and you are the embodiment of a leader, because you've gone through all of the 5 levels and you get to the topmost pinnacle. People see you've got a position. Obviously, we start from there. You're likable. You've added value to the firm. You've added value to people. You are consistent. You're trustworthy. People know what to expect, and you're bringing your A game every single day. There was a manager like this, a project manager like this, who was also a program manager back in the day when it was US Airways and not American Airlines. I'll never forget Jim. He was a powerhouse of a PM, got respect, trust, knocking things out of the park, and a humble guy to go with it. So my suggestion to you PMs is begin to be strategic in your influence. Okay. Let's go over to step 6 here. So my 6th tip for project managers is, again, PMA. Now, PMA could be positive mental attitude. But in this tip, it is all about your allies. Have you got allies? Have you got positively motivated allies? You need to have allies. So 6 is all about developing a base of allies. Too many people trying to do it on their own, but you should go back to this relational, page 63. The big bullet there is relational. Participating in networking, having connections and alliances. A lot of PMs, they forget you cannot do it alone. Find your allies. Find people that can help you and people you can help primarily. And you'll make it go round, it'll be like a river. So PMA, positive mental attitude, but PMA, positively motivated allies. I once knew a PM who got so frustrated as a result of the lack of allies. You have to be strategic about allies, but it starts off with you having a positive attitude, not looking for what you can get, but looking for what you can give. So at level 4, you're looking for what you can give. You are bound to get allies. Now, as I was looking for what I could give when working at Honeywell, inadvertently, I ended up having a bunch of allies, folks, a ton of allies, even without doing much work. I mean, allies left, right, and center. It got to the point that I had to leave Honeywell. I ended up outdoing myself. I ended up doing a 6-month project in 3 months, and then it was, what is Phil going to do next? So at the end of the day, I had to leave. I was made an offer, but being one of those types of project managers that it's kind of like, I'm looking for the next thing to do, that's beyond me. I was looking for the next challenge. The next challenge was right there at Honeywell, at the Tempe office. But this job, of course, it was beyond what I had done in the past. It had to do with information technology. And when the hiring manager took a look at what my resume said, he said, you're a good guy, but can you really do this? I said, well, just ask people that know me. I can do anything. I'll make it happen. So a lot of my allies, based on relational building through this job in defense and space, they begin to come out of the woodworks and call this manager and say, you need to hire this guy. He can do it. He will get it done. The manager said, well, he hasn't really developed test scripts and use cases and done this whole IT thing in the past, And one of them said, look, if you don't hire him, you've missed the boat. He's got the experience. He's got what it takes. He may not have written test scripts, but he's got web development experience. Hire the guy. Long story short, by the time all of my allies bombarded this manager felt, oh my goodness, if I don't hire this guy, what have I done? Anyway, he took a chance on me and hired me. Long story short, that engagement was a tremendous success. It was such a success, my manager got promoted. And because of what I had done in the department, after my manager left, I was not told to leave. I was told to stay on for more time. In fact, I stayed on as long as I could contractually stay on. But that is an example of how allies will come to your aid when you need it. There are times that you cannot sell yourself beyond a certain point. It's now in the hands of allies. And if you don't have allies, if I didn't have allies, there's no way I would have been in that position. So having allies, it goes a long way. And I'm not just talking about benefits that may be, getting a job, getting a position. I'm talking about information. I'm talking about allies putting in a word for you. I'm talking about allies being there to support you. And that's why PMI talks about relational, very big. But anyway, my step 6, positive mental attitude, but PMA, positively motivated allies, and you be someone else's ally. All right. Regarding this ally and PMA's positive mental attitude, I want to call your attention to the fact that it's not about the tools one more time, because a lot of people, they are so feverish about project management tools. It's not about the tools, folks. I have a quote that says, great project management is not great because of software tools. It is made great because of the great minds and attitudes behind the tools. Great positive mental attitude behind the tools, great project management. Poor mental attitude, scarcity mindset, fear of stakeholders. What's going to happen? Poor project management. And you're going to be bringing that negative vibe to your meetings. The moment you say, oh, that stakeholder, that one, I can't stand the sight of them. Why are they even here? Let me get through this meeting and I'll be free of their miserable faces. That's the wrong attitude. You don't want to think that way. You want to think, how can I help this stakeholder to get beyond where they are, to become an ally or a positive stakeholder? In fact, I was just talking to one of my students today, and we're talking about the theory X and theory Y manager. And I really like what this student said. This student said, if I have a theory X manager, I see it as my duty to take that manager out of theory X and move them into theory Y. And I thought, wow, that's profound. One of the few times I've heard a project manager take responsibility for their manager's behavior. And that is the right positive mental attitude to have, regardless. Anyway, let's go over to 7 so that we can get this done. So 7 is solve the real problem. Solve the real problem in any scenario. I remember when I started trading back in the day, training the PMBOK guide, I got a little bit carried away, folks. I got a bit carried away with this thing because I thought it was one of the best things since sliced bread. And I started training people and saying, you got to use this and use this and use this. And it took a lot of leadership development and maturity to see I was applying the PMBOK guide the wrong way. You don't just apply everything under the sun or everything in the PMBOK guide to your projects. You have to solve the real problem. A lot of PMs, they revel in paperwork and documentation. Don't get me wrong, documentation is not bad. But when it becomes more about documentation as opposed to collaboration, you got a problem. So I want to encourage PMs to solve the real problem. There was a bus driver driving along his route, and this had been his route for many weeks, many months, and he was really happy about his job until one day he stopped at a particular bus stop and on jumped Big John. And Big John said, Big John doesn't pay. And he glowered at the driver and walked to the back of the bus and sat down defiantly without producing the fee for traveling on the bus. And the driver, mind you, let's talk about the height of Big John. Big John was about 6'4", arms hanging down to the ground, 25-inch biceps. He looked like a beast. Now, the bus driver was about 5'1", totally dwarfed the bus driver. This continued day after day. The poor bus driver got frustrated. Big John will come and look at him. Big John doesn't pay. Walk to the back, sit down. And this happened for weeks and weeks. The driver got so fed up, he said, I'm going to go for judo. I'm going to go for weightlifting. I'm going to go for P90X. Everything under the sun, this bus driver started throwing weightlifting, fitness, name it. And then finally, the bus driver was a beast. He was jacked. He was so ripped. People would look at him and run for the hills. Now, the bus driver felt good about himself and got on the bus and said, I'm going to challenge that Big John when I see him next. The bus driver is driving as usual. He gets to this particular stop after many months of training and getting into the zone and going into the Zen mindset. And Big John gets on the bus and looks at him and says, Big John doesn't pay. And the driver looked at Big John and says, and why doesn't Big John pay? And Big John said, Big John's got a bus pass. The driver had spent all that effort, all that energy, getting jacked, doing P90X, doing all that stuff, whereas Big John had a bus pass. That's why Big John hadn't paid. Aren't a lot of PMs like that? They're trying to solve problems that aren't there by using ineffective documentation, or maybe it's the PMO. If you are a PM in a PMO, and they're doing what that bus driver did, solving problems that aren't there, you need to ask your PMO, why are we doing this? That's a way you can lead, folks. That's a way you can challenge the status quo. In the PMBOK guide, if you go on to page 64, third line from the bottom, it says, the difference between management and leadership, management accepts status quo. Leadership challenges the status quo. As my good mentor, who isn't with us anymore, but my mentor from a distance, Steve Jobs would say, why join the Navy when you can be a pirate? Why accept the status quo when you can challenge it and get things done more effectively and differently? A lot of project managers have challenged the status quo in their firm. And for that reason, their firms have adopted an agile or blended approach because it suits their projects better. So project managers, 7 is solve the real problem. Don't be like the bus driver. You want to make sure you know what the problem is, and then you attack the real problem. And then you use the 80-20 principle to select the right tools, the right techniques, the right approaches, not every single one. I trained a firm out in Louisiana that builds vessels and boats and barges and stuff. And I was quite impressed at how they used their earned value, because they used it in a totally different way from the convention. Instead of getting hung up on the numbers, which really wouldn't have meant much to them at the end of the day, they used resource hours. Adjust the way you apply the PMBOK guide. All right. 8, think like a catalyst and take the initiative. So take on the tough projects, the projects that no one wants to touch with a 10-foot pole. I want to challenge you, step up, project manager. Don't run away from those projects. This is how you're going to get trust ammo. This is how you're going to build your trust brand, by taking on the tough stuff. And you might stumble at first, but keep going. Keep building your team of allies. Keep adding value to people, and you will succeed. So we need to think like a catalyst, okay? And we need to take the initiative, because not every boss is going to push you onto projects. Some bosses are servant leadership mindset bosses, and they kind of guide you along the way. And if you don't want to do it, they won't force you, but you will miss out on the benefits of taking on the tough projects. Those that take on the tough projects without being forced to, those are the ones who are really influencing. Those are the ones who are really, truly making a difference by influence. All right, 9. Let's get out of here in a few minutes. It says, seek sponsor involvement. A lot of PMs, they come into an organization and they're not really thinking about the dynamics. Do you know that one of the major reasons for project failure is lack of executive sponsorship? You're told to work on a project and you've got no sponsor. How on earth are you going to succeed? How are you going to burst through the levels and influence at the higher levels when you don't have a conduit to do that? That's why you need a sponsor. Seek sponsor involvement. You need to start changing the mindset in your firm. If they don't have a sponsor-driven mindset, you need to expose them to the importance of having an executive sponsor, and you need to begin to live in that world of sponsorship. Because no matter how strong the PM is, there are some roadblocks that just cannot be removed by PMs. So you're going to have to get executive sponsorship. Executive sponsors have a wider sphere of influence as a result of their position, primarily. So you want to seek sponsor involvement on projects. And if you are in a firm where this whole concept is new, I want to challenge you folks. Begin to adopt the mindset of executive sponsorship. It's going to help you. If you want to read more about that, go to PMI's website, search through it. You're going to find information and documentation about sponsorship. So I was taking a look at a document here a few hours ago from the PMI, and it is titled 5 Early Warning Signs of Project Failure. Do you know one of the signs of project failure? Number 2, I'll read a little bit from it. It says, sponsors that are seldom available. That's a sign of project failure. Project failure waiting to happen, folks. It says, another major reason projects fail or fall short is a lack of project sponsorship and buy-in by executives. But you already knew that, right? The role of project sponsors is to assist with the championing of the project, assist with securing funding, resolving conflict, and providing support to project, program, and portfolio managers. Project managers rely on sponsors for day-to-day support, leadership advice, and to demonstrate to employees and other stakeholders that the project is backed by company executives. Let me continue reading. It says, if the project sponsors are frequently absent or seem to show they do not care about the project, projects can start off on the wrong foot and fail to get off the ground. A lack of perceived support by executive sponsors can make it difficult for project managers, in turn, to gain buy-in from other stakeholders and team members. It says project managers need to work with sponsors to maintain visible continuity in terms of support for the project from start to completion. So, reason for failure number 2 in this document from CIO is the lack of sponsorship involvement. Let's talk about number 10, and we call it a day here. Number 10, how project managers can influence. It says, value face-to-face communication over what? Can you guess? Email. Email is one of the biggest killers of project influence for project managers, because instead of leveraging the 55-38-7 from Professor Emeritus Albert Mehrabian, they are totally bypassing 93% of low-hanging fruit in tone of voice and body language, because they value email over face-to-face communication. Email is one of the biggest killers on projects. It's very unemotional, very stoic, or sometimes could be perceived with the wrong emotion. And whenever you send an email, as my mentor Rick Brickman said in his book, Dealing with People You Can't Stand, sending email is an opportunity for people to hallucinate freely about what you're saying and how you're saying it. So when you're crafting an email, a sensitive email, proceed with caution. Why not go to where they are? Why not pick up the phone? Do you know why a lot of organizations spend so much money on travel for project managers? It is because they know that messages are better received and absorbed, especially difficult messages. They are better received and absorbed by face-to-face communication. When you look someone in the eye and you tell them the truth, they know. When you tell them why something happened and that it's for their own good that you proceed in a particular way, they look at you and they know. Why? Because of Professor Emeritus Albert Mehrabian's discovery of the 55-38-7. The body language and the tone of voice far outweigh the words. And that's why project managers should value face-to-face communication over email. Have you ever been in a situation where you sent email and it got into the wrong hands? Talk about Sony, huh? Let's forget that. But within organizations, has that happened to you? It's happened to me. I forgot about the proverbial reply all, and I thought I was replying my boss. And there I was talking about things regarding a particular stakeholder. That email should never have gone out of my outbox. Proceed with caution, folks. And the result wasn't a pretty one. So I told you about this particular manager who let me do my master's degree full-time. That same manager, when he got the email, he picked up the phone and let Phil know a thing or two about email. Now, this was way back. This was like going to almost 20 years ago. But it was a good lesson about email. Be careful with email. Face-to-face communication should be valued over email. Value relationships over documentation. Value that face-to-face rapport over sending emails that give people an opportunity to hallucinate freely. Be very careful. So with that, we've come to the end of my 10 ways for the project manager to effectively lead. You want to make sure you are leading. You want to make sure you are following PMI suggestions here. PMI suggestions in the PMBOK guide, page 63, page 64, 65. I mean, there's so much leadership stuff. I keep saying chapter 3 is my favorite chapter in the 6th edition, because the PMI decided to take a stand regarding leadership, and they made it clear the difference between managing systems, managing process procedures versus leading people. All right, so politics, power, and getting things done is talked about. But I also want to read one line from the beginning of chapter 3, and then we'll call it a day. So chapter 3 is on page 51. It says, watch this. The project manager plays a critical role in what? The leadership of a project team in order to achieve the project's objectives. This role is clearly visible throughout the project. The project manager plays a critical role in the leadership. It's all about the leadership, folks. And the true measure of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You better believe it. Leadership is what makes your projects succeed. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to look out for my Applying the PMBOK Guide series that's coming out. It's going to be training project managers how to effectively apply the PMBOK Guide. Remember the 80-20 principle, Pareto's law. Don't kill people. Hey, don't make people think, oh, there goes that weirdo again. Apply it with sense, all right, and lead. So thank you very much. Let's see, I think some of our friends chatted in this evening. So I want to thank Biren for chatting in. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Dara, how you doing? Dara says, this is off topic, but if I may ask, what is the difference between risk management plan and risk report? Very good question. So your risk management plan is a plan, of course, for how you're going to identify risks, a plan for how you're going to analyze risks, a plan for how you're going to do it qualitatively, a plan for how you'll, let's call it the P times I matrix, the probability impact matrix will look. A lot of people do not define upfront, what does my P and I matrix look like? How are we going to identify risks? Are we going to use a Delphi technique or Delphi technique? Are we going to get people into a room? How are we going to do it? So your risk management plan is a how are we going to manage risks? How are we going to manage risks on this project? Okay, that is answered in your risk management plan. Your risk report is like a state of the union address as far as what the risks are like on your project right now. Your risk report is updated throughout the project. You want your management to know the risks that are a pain in the neck and are absolutely killing your project right now. You want your management to know those risks that have an insanely high probability and impact, those that are coming up soon, those that are still as unmanageable as ever. Basically, it's the landscape, the lay of the land regarding the actual state of risks on your project. The high level risks that you've identified, they are going to outlive the first stage of your risk report, and they're going to go into the next stage, which is we're now into actuals. When we did our analysis, these were the top risks. Now we're live. This is the state. So it's a report on your current risk profile and what is happening as far as risks are concerned on your project. So it's something that you need to update regularly, okay? And I want to thank all of you who have chatted in. Biren, thank you very much for chatting in. Biren says, how to deal gracefully with negative stakeholders and ensure that work gets done. I hope I've given you some ideas about that. Sometimes project managers have to make tough decisions in the interest of the project, which disrupts team balance and harmony. How to deal with such awkward situations. Very good, Biren. So it revolves around leadership. In order for people to buy into your solution or your ideas about how the project should be managed, you're going to have to earn it. Honestly, that is the only way people are going to buy in. Even people who are positional leaders face resistance. How much more project managers? And that's why you need to build your trust brand and you need to get this equity. John Maxwell has a quote. He says, trust is like change in a leader's pocket. Having trust, that trust factor, it's like change in the leader's pocket. With it, they are solvent. And without that trust brand, without that trust change in your pocket, you're bankrupt. A lot of PMs, they're bankrupt. They've got no trust with the team. So when you make decisions, they're looked at as being inferior or unsuitable decisions. But the more you build trust over the time period, the more you bring the team to the table to have dialogue and not to beat them over the head with a stick, the more they'll begin to trust what you're doing. Biren says, as a PMP, I have started implementing best practices in my organization. Well done. However, it seems to be difficult replicating the same at the client site. A government organization which has, you just open a can of worms, which has its typical mentality. How to enforce such practices to the client. Again, Beren, you got to earn it. You got to build your trust brand, and you're going to have to get allies. And allies are going to help you propagate your message, whatever that message is. Beren says, by the way, I was lucky to find videos of Alistair Coburn. Very good. On YouTube. Downloaded 4 hours of content. Well, that's Alistair for you. He always wants to give, and he's the open source mindset guy. He's a great guy. You're welcome, Dira. Carlos, how you doing, man? It's about applying the PMBOK guide. All right. Thank you, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.